Hi guys, welcome back, and this time around I'm bringing you a 1 plus 2 review comparison, but instead of the more conventional 1 plus 2 IEMs which have the, let's say, the more traditional Harman style of tuning, I thought it would be interesting to bring to you an example of the different tuning styles and the IEMs that in my opinion do that particular style the best, or do that particular style in the most efficient manner. Obviously, there are a lot more IEMs that I could have, thrown into the equation, and maybe some of them were or are perhaps even better than the ones that I've chosen. But I thought, well, let's keep to the more recent stuff instead of going and fetch IEMs which are already, more antique or difficult to find because they already have been discontinued. One that jumps to mind is the C Audio, the Yume 2, a phenomenal IEM that, in my opinion, got very little attention, very little love, and it did what it did very, very well. But anyway, that aside, what do I have here? I've got two IEMs here that are relatively new. I've had them for a while, and as sometimes happens, they just got kind of forgotten. Although I was listening to them, I just always kind of put other stuff in front of them to review, and my apologies for that. One of them is the Oriveti, the OH301, BH301, my apologies, also known as the Low Master, and this belongs to the Bleak series of IEMs. Okay, so this is a 1 plus 2. I mean, I'm not going to take you and bore you with the case. Oriveti has always very understated, cases, very, very sleek, very classy stuff. The tips are quite good, and I'm actually using the stock tips. That's one thing that I actually do like about Oriveti, is that somehow they've been able to put already in the packaging of their IEMs the tips that do work the best, not only for me, but do work actually the best with the actual IEM. The case is a case that we've already seen from Oriveti. It's a nice pocketable case, plenty of space. As for the IEM itself, nice resin shell. It goes and fetches a lot of inspiration from their previous models. I mean, when you look at it, you get kind of vibes of the OH 700, their 1 plus 6. But anyway, it's a nicely built resin shell. It not heavy or uncomfortable at all. It's very ergonomic. The cable is actually a decent cable as well. Pity it's not a detachable termination, but it's a 3.5, but that's fine. In terms of price, it's $149, so I guess it's within reason for what is expected for a 1 plus 2. The other one is the Tipsy Speaker 260. Again, I'm not going to bore you with the whole casing and boxing and so on and so forth. Brings the SPICA style case, brings again some decent tips which I'm also using. Oops, focus. There we go. My apologies. Like I said, it brings a decent case, nice pack style, also pocketable. The IEM itself, again, it's a very light IEM. It's for a 1 plus 2. Actually, it's extremely light. It has build vibes which remind me a lot of the stuff that comes from EPZ. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this was actually made by them, since EPZ has already collaborated in the past with Tipsy. The only thing which, I mean, surprisingly, although the cable doesn't look very impressive, it actually reminds me of the cables that you also find with some of the models from NF Acoust, or NF Audio, as known before or previously. It actually does work quite well. It at least doesn't tangle or anything of the sort. Again, it fits perfectly in my ears, no complaints there. And again, it's got its own particular type of tuning, which in my opinion has been well achieved, or well executed. All right, so anyway, that's the speaker there. And then on the top row, I've got three other IEMs which I've got here to serve as a basis, and so that we can kind of set each one of these IEMs in their position, or position them according to each other, not so much as to ascertain which is the best, because I think every one of these IEMs will have a particular crowd of people. Maybe yes, you could argue that some will suit more people than others. That's debatable, but they all have a specific crowd of people. We've got the a full Performer 2, Performer 3, sorry, also known as the Explorer. Next to that, we've got the Queen of Audio Adonis 2, and next to that, the Arcadia from Zigat, the XVB collaboration. In terms of price, like I said, this is 149. This is also 149. The Explorer is sometimes comes down to as low as $99. I believe right now it's at $109. The Queen of Audio oscillates between $170 and $199, and the same thing goes for the Arcadia, oscillates between $170 and $200 if you actually get it from Zigat themselves. In terms of the sources that I used, well, I used my trusty topping with the Yuki, as you can see, and with the Cayenne. I also used the R2 from Venture Electronics with different dongles, be it the 2 from EPZ, or be it then the Rose SLC, the RZ500, and I also used the Q15 from FIO. The one that I ended up using the most, I have to say, is the Yuki, and the dongle from Rose Techniques individually by itself, with not attached to the actual Venture Electronics amplifier. Not that it worked better or worse without the amplifier. I just found that it actually matched very well the IEMs in a manner which I wasn't expecting, considering that it's also got an ESS DAC chip, and the others are basically Cirrus Logics. I wasn't expecting it, and so much so that I thought that it was more than enough on its own connected to the IEMs, and no need for it to be connected with the amplifier. I mean, power was not an issue there. Okay, let's get this going and get it out of the way quickly, because I don't want to take up your Sunday. My apologies. As I was saying, each one of these IEMs has their own particular style of sound, or their own particular signature, which in my opinion has been well executed. So just to get to, or make something perfectly clear, I don't want to give the idea, or want you guys to come out of this review thinking, oh, this one is better than that one, or that one is better than this one, or anything of the sort. No, each one of these IEMs has its strengths and its weaknesses, and thus will be best tailored for a specific crowd of people. Starting off here with the Oriveti, it's got and especially if you already know the Oriveti lineup, and you are used to their product line, you immediately notice that there's a typical style of sound here, and that sound, or that characteristical well, that's a wrong word there, that's really bad, that typical Oriveti sound in the case here of the Low Master. And when I started listening to it, it was something that immediately came to it jumped to me immediately, was that it had that sound that's the Dyna Bird from also the Bleak series gave us. And what is that sound? That sound was a sound which had very nice bass. Yes, the bass here on the Low Master is phenomenal. It's got a nice weight, it's got a nice tonality, a nice timbre. It had good extension up top in terms of the highs, although there was a slight tendency of it being more pending towards a warmer kind of presentation of that high end than a more clinical presentation. And then it had these mids which were a little bit on the forward side, and that occasionally, and depending on what style of music you were listening, and like for example with something like Alchemy by Philip Sayce, it's something that immediately comes up here in the Low Master. This forwardness can bring forth a presentation which is sometimes just a little bit overly intense, and for me particularly, it made me have to bring down the volume slightly, and so I wouldn't say that the Low Master would be an IM that I particularly would find capable of playing all genres of music, especially if you are like me, that you like listening a little bit on the louder side. If you're more of a low volume listener, then fine, then that's not going to be an issue. It will play most genres well. And the only genre that I would say would need a little bit of attention would be something where, like rock, where guitars and stuff like and string instruments are very prominent, where you would notice that, let's say, 1.5 to 4K come out a little bit more energetically. Other than that, the truth is I cannot really point any other fault really at the Low Master. Obviously it's at a price point which it's highly competitive. You have a lot of IEMs at this price point. You have some solid 1+3, solid 1+4s even. So obviously being a 1+2, it's got its work cut out for it. You can somehow try and make or justify the value by the fact that you are buying a product which is from a brand which is a little bit more, let's call it high end, a little bit more different, not so mainstream. So you are using something which is more a little exclusive, decent cable, decent accessories. That can be a justification that you can give to yourself if you want. But ultimately, this is an IM, like I said, that its biggest obstacle, I think, is that the price at what it is being sold for is a price where there's a lot of competition, and it doesn't necessarily do anything which makes it stand out as unique in terms of its sound reproduction. The only thing that has as a unique feature in terms of its sound is, like I said, that it's got that forwardness in the mids, which for people that do like it and do appreciate it, then definitely this will be a solid IM for that. Next, we have the Tipsy, the Speaker 260, again a 1+2, priced at $149. And once again, very much like in the case of the Low Master, the moment I listened to it, not only was I capable of, to a certain extent, identifying the Tipsy house sound, but also identifying the sound with another IM that they have, and in this particular case, it was a single ED that they make known as the Tipsy TT Romso. They both have the same style of sound, which is an emphasis on the mid bass, a slightly relaxed pinna gain, so 2 to let's say 5K, a little bit relaxed, and then energized from there up. So it gives a sound which I guess you could say is V-shaped. But the reason for that is because Tipsy has its roots in, or does a lot of work with IMs which are used then on a stage scenario, and that means that those IMs that do need to have the lower end and the upper end a little bit more energized, a little bit more energetic to make themselves noticed when being used on stage, where there's a whole bunch of other noises around and so on and so forth. And that's exactly what you notice when you're listening to the speaker, that the 260 has a very much a stage kind of monitor sound, emphasized on the parts of the frequency where it needs to be emphasized, so that mid bass it's clean, it's impactful, it's present. There's no need to have crazy amounts of sub bass, although I have to say that it was capable of going down low, and then it's got that upper end nicely energetic and present. The curious thing was that because of the way that it's tuned as well, that part there of the 1 to 2, 3K area, where in the Low Master I was finding somehow an energy that was a little bit maybe enthusiastic at times, there on the Speaker 260, no, I didn't have those issues. If anything, those issues then shifted themselves a little bit higher up, where on occasion I did notice a little bit of sibilance. But again, a nitpick, much like it was a nitpick on the Low Master, mind you. I mean, like I said, they all have their particular style of tuning. You could ultimately say that the Low Master has got this sound which makes the mids be the star of the show. This has a sound which, because of its heritage of being a stage oriented company, then the sound has to be mid-bass focused and high-end focused. So stuff like hi-hats and so on come across beautifully as well. Cymbals, very nice, nothing to be said there. I would say that in terms of soundstage and imaging, again, this is perhaps slightly better than the Low Master. But ultimately, they both do things well in their own way, in their own particular style. I wouldn't say, like I mentioned earlier, I don't want to come across as, oh, one is better than the other. No, they have their particular crowd. If you like I said, more mid-bass focused genres, if you like rock, I would probably say that this would be the better choice, or the wiser choice, because of that area there, like I mentioned, that is a problem for me, not being so prominent and more calmed down, so you can actually listen to it at a higher volume, which is the issue that I mainly encountered. Yeah, it wasn't so much at low volumes that it was a problem. It was when I pushed the volume a little bit, it kind of you got the feeling that it ran out of steam. All right, but other than that, be it the Low Master or be it the Tipsy, there's no real negatives or bad points. Their biggest problem in either case is the competition. I mean, they're both, like I said, $149, $150. There's a lot of IMs out there at that price point. And as I mentioned earlier, if in the case of the Low Master, maybe, you could argue that yes, it's got a few things going for it, but ultimately in terms of sound, it doesn't do anything special. I would say that the Tipsy does do something special in that it offers that stage-like sound, very well done, very well executed. I mean, already the Tiramsu, the single DD, as I mentioned before, was an IM that I particularly liked, and it had very much that organic, old-school type of presentation, which was, again, similar to the sound of for example, the Venture Electronics, the CA. So if you like that sound of the Venture Electronics, the CA, you will like the TT Romso, and if you will like the TT Romso, you will like the SPICA. Okay, let's put it that way. So they are different, but both good at what they are doing. Okay, on the top there, I've got, like I said, I've got the Explorer for my full, which has got that very kind of neutralist presentation of the mids, upper mids and treble, which is again the same thing that happens with the Arcadia, very neutral up top. The difference between the two of them is basically the bass level, monstrous bass, and a more balanced out bass with regards to the rest of the frequency. And then the Adonis again has got monstrous amounts of bass, with a mid and high frequency section that, although not neutral, and more perhaps, if I'm looking at it just individually, kind of slightly more similar to the SPICA overall, is somehow magically very balanced out with the rest of the bass. Now, do they have flaws? Yes, they do. The flaw of the Adonis is that it can be at times overly warm, and lack that openness in sound that specific genres have. If I'm listening to, for example, Jack of Speed by Steely Dan, I have to say that although it plays it nicely, you feel that you're listening to a presentation which is overly emphasized. It's overly heavy. The Explorer does it better. The Speaker, the 260, probably does it better as well. I would even argue that maybe even the Low Master does it better. If I'm listening to something like No Love by Busy Explore, then that's the clear winner. It's got that bass heaviness done well. It's a clean, powerful bass. It does it phenomenally well. As for the Arcadia, I mean, it's got things that these two have. I mean, you've got the bass to a certain extent that the Adonis 2 has, and you've got the upper mids and treble that to a certain extent the Performer has as well. The Explorer, sorry, has as well. However, it's all about a sort of question of balance here. If you are looking for a bass heavy IEM, then yes, this is an option with a more neutral mids and highs. If you're looking for a bass heavy IEM with a more prominent mids and highs, then the the Adonis will be an option, although take with a grain of salt when I say it's got more prominent mids and highs. It's got more prominent mids and highs compared to the Arcadia. If you're looking for a very neutral presentation, then the Explorer will probably be the better option. Okay, so again, we have a situation here where each one of these IEMs has their own style, you know, and it's now a question of who ticks the most right boxes. Price-wise, the one that ticks the most right boxes, and I think is the best value for money, is the Explorer. At around $100, considering what it, you know, the accessories, considering the quality of the shell, how it fits, how it plays, it's without question the one that ticks the most right boxes. If you ask me between the Performer and the Low Master, which would you prefer? I prefer the Explorer because it has one thing there that makes it stand out over the Low Master, which is I don't have to worry about volume. I can play it loud and everything always scales very decently. So you know, between the two of them, I would say that one there ticks a little bit more right boxes than the Low Master. As compared to the Speaker, again, very much the same situation, although ultimately I would still take that, but the difference here is is less. I honestly wouldn't be unhappy with either one of them because they can do a lot of genres well. You know, if you can fault the Explorer in anything, is that it maybe sometimes can sound a little bit dull. If we go now to the Arcadia and the Adonis, and I'll do the two of them together, they have, like I said, a very similar sound. The price, obviously, they are the most expensive. They can cost close to $200, and in the best situation, around 170, so significantly more expensive than the other. Between the two of them, which is my favorite, I will say the Adonis is my favorite. It just seems a little bit more well-rounded than the Arcadia. The Arcadia can at some time on occasions sound even more thick in its presentation because of the fact that it doesn't have the upper end maybe as energetic as the Adonis more times. So I would say I would prefer that over that. Now these two, now this one compared to these, which would be the one that I would choose? Look, if I was listening to at lower volumes, I would probably say that, you know, the Low Master does have a strong case going for it. Yes, it does. It doesn't have the bass, but you know, it loses out again in terms of the moment I push the volume a little bit, it just doesn't have the mannerisms that the Adonis 2 has, and so ultimately the Adonis would be the one that I would prefer. As compared to the Speaker, although that's more sub-bass focused and this is more mid-bass focused, the rest of the frequency range is kind of similar, so I really wouldn't be disappointed with either one of them. Of course, we're talking 149, we're talking 170 to $200 over there. That does have a better cable, that does have a better or a nicer case, excellent accessories. It has enough to justify itself again over the Speaker, let's put it that way. So for me personally, myself personally, the IEMs that I think stand out the most here are the Adonis 2, the Explorer, and the Speaker 260. As for the Low Master and the Arcadia, nothing wrong with them, guys. Trust me, there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. I'm giving you my personal opinion, my personal tastes, and how I hear them when I put them into my ears, and how these units actually sound, because obviously there's going to be slight deviations from unit to unit, but how they sound for me, and that's, like I said, they just bring together more of the right things which are of importance. And that's it, guys. I'll show you now the graphs and we'll wrap it up. All right, take care. Welcome, guys, now to the graph section here for the Oriveti BH301 Low Master and the Tipsy Speaker 260. Anyway, I'm gonna start you off here with the graph for the Tipsy 260. as you can see, and as I mentioned in the review earlier, a prominence in the mid bass, okay, with a kind of relaxed early pin again, and then it's the 4 to 8K that's a little bit more energized, but because of this energy that we have from the back here, it kind of doesn't let anything on top there kind of be harsh or aggressive, with the occasional sibilance being the only thing really that I can point. And as I also mentioned, if you guys recall, that it made me think about a sibling of the speaker, which is the TT Romso, and that's the graph of the TT Romso which I've just placed. Very similar tuning style, as you can see, so a lot of the same overall, let's say, genetics or genes or philosophy of tuning. The emphasis here is having a bass and a treble area that can, to a certain extent, handle the stage environment, where, you know, noise and so on and so forth will somehow easily bring down those areas of the spectrum, and that's what they've done. So you know, there's definitely a philosophy of wanting this to sound like a stage monitor, let's put it that way. Okay, so that's the Tipsy. The next one I'm going to be showing you now is the Oriveti. That's the Oriveti, the Low Master. And as you can see straight away, mids are going to be the focus, and I'll explain why I say that, so that you guys will understand better why I'm saying that. If you look carefully here at the 100 hertz point, let me just, okay, the 100 hertz point. 100 hertz point, yeah, it corresponds at around 1.5 in the mids. So that forwardness that we get in that mids, in that sensation that I talked about of this area here, of the mids to upper mids sometimes being just maybe a little bit overly emphasized. That's the reason why. If by comparison I put here quickly the speaker so you guys can see, let me just take away the Low Master. When I take that same point, okay, it actually corresponds to around 4K. So that whole area there that can maybe be a little bit of a problem is below that reference, okay, and you've got all this energy here that somehow helps as well control or mitigate some possible aggressiveness. When we look at the Low Master, not only do we have, and again, let me just quickly put here the speaker, you can see there's a big difference in terms of mid bass between one and the other. So not only do we have yes, a cleaner bass without a doubt. Yes, it's a bass that it's basically flat by roughly 300 hertz, so there's no bleeding into the mids or anything of the sort. But the truth is this, the energy that is back here is not enough to a certain extent to control this part of the spectrum, in my opinion. And although, like I said, the graph doesn't show that in a flagrant manner, when you actually are listening, at least I picked up on that. I did pick up on that issue, that on certain songs, you know, it just was, I don't know, a little bit less would have been nicer, especially when the volume is turned up. The other ones that I had here were the A Fool, and I had the Explorer. I actually had the A Fool here in two. I tried it with two different tips. Let's just realign these. Okay, and you can see that yes, there's a definite difference in this area from about 5K onwards, but audibly not so noticeable, the difference, to be realistic. And I ended up leaving the black tips that I had on there, which are from Panon, the liqueurs. Again, if I take that 1 kilohertz point there, just for you guys to understand, sorry, 1 kilohertz, 100 hertz, if you look and see how it corresponds, and this basically translates to what the sound of the Explorer is all about. It's a very relaxed, very mellow, non-aggressive. I mean, we're talking about a pinna gain of 4 dBs, so that's definitely not going to be an issue. And then it's got enough energy from back there. If I quickly just put you at the Low Master so you guys can see, let me just change the color of the Low Master to red so you guys can see what I'm talking about. If I quickly then put the Low Master there, you can see exactly what I mean. They've got the same sort of bass style, a gliding bass style, very clean, okay, fine. But the Low Master definitely has more energy, and that extra energy that it does have is then noticeable in some occasions, not in the best of manners, okay. So that's the full. The next one I'm going to show you is the Zigat Arcadia. Here is the Arcadia, again another one that has that very neutralish kind of approach to the upper mids, upper mids and treble. You could argue even that it's got the same style as the full, the Explorer. That's the Explorer, and it does just less bass, but overall the balance that's struck, I think that it's on the Explorer, it's a better achieved one. It sounds, although some people complained about it sounding maybe a little bit too lazy, a little bit too lifeless, I don't think that was an issue, and it actually does sound very balanced, which is something that on the Arcadia. And I mean, it's not that I dislike the Arcadia or anything of the sort. No, but the gain that we have here on the bass, we're talking roughly almost 14 dBs of bass gain. It's significant, especially when you see that the rest of the frequency here in terms of the upper mid, treble and so on is very relaxed, overly relaxed at times. But hey, this is the way that the IM was tuned. This is following HVB's recommendation. It sounds great, it sounds fine. I just found that in certain songs it just was overly excessive, okay. Compared, sorry, not compared, let me just quickly show you first the Queen of Audio, the Adonis 2. The Adonis 2 also has monster bass, as you can see, but instead of being a tucked style, it's more of a gliding style, and we are talking about again roughly 13-14 dBs of bass gain. The pinna gain is around the 6 dB, so a little bit more energetic there. The 100 hertz point where it corresponds in terms of the mids, it's right up in the treble area. So again, this area is not going to be harsh or aggressive or anything of the sort. Comparing it to the Arcadia, you can see that this area of the treble is where they mostly differ. Yes, okay, there's a little bit of a difference here as well between 100 and 300 hertz, but overall they kind of come out being very similar because of this then difference that exists here. But it's this difference here on the Adonis, this extra energy that it has here in the treble, that makes it then sound a little bit more open. Obviously, and I mentioned it as well, the Adonis does suffer from the same kind of problem of being at times overly excessive in terms of its bass and the warmth that it brings, okay. But if you are a person that likes that type of sound, that maybe just more warm, more organic, more, I would even say overly organic type of sound, then the Adonis will be fine. And again, like I said earlier, they all have their own very particular style. This is a bass heavy with enough energy up top to kind of keep things in tabs. The Arcadia is bass heavy with a little bit less energy up top and a slightly different bass presentation. It's gonna be very much a give and take between the two of them. When we look at the full, where is it? There we go. The full is very neutralish across the whole board. Everything very neutralish. Nothing stands out. Nothing. It's actually interesting to see how the full has got a little bit of the same vibe as the Adonis, going in the upper mids and treble, a little bit of the same vibe, but it's got as well again that nice gliding style of bass, you know. When we talk about the Low Master, again another different style, more forward mid presentation instead of being that more laid back mid presentation, which is kind of also become a characteristic of the meta style tuning. It's got a little bit more of a forward mid presentation, which at lower volumes is interesting but can occasionally be just a little bit overwhelming. And then finally the speaker, which kind of has, the speaker is interesting because, let me just take away some of these. The speaker has got a little bit as well of the Adonis type of presentation. Let me just make here the speaker a different color so it's better to understand. I'll make it blue. There we go. Okay, the speaker is in blue. It's got a little bit of that same vibe as the Adonis, you know, that thickness of the bass here helping to camouflage maybe a little bit of that possible aggressiveness or harshness up top, but very similar vibe of tuning, and again sounds good. I mean, there's honestly here, like I said earlier in the review, each one of these IEMs will be focused to a particular person or particular group of persons that like a tuning style, and that's basically it. I mean, there's no need for me to overly complicate things. None of them is really better or worse. It's down to personal preferences. My personal preferences reside on the Adonis, reside on the speaker, and on the full. That's the ones that I like the most. And then the Arcadia and the Low Master, they are the ones I would choose as a final option, let's put it that way. Okay, guys, as always, like and subscribe. Any questions, please feel free to ask me. Take care now. Bye bye.